Hello everybody, it's Shakes. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to be going over how to get better at Wingman in CSGO. Now, Wingman is an entirely different game than the rest of normal matchmaking. Well, not entirely different game, they are both CSGO, so literally it's not, but figuratively it feels entirely different. You have to play everything very, very different. There's a lot of different rules. Obviously it's a 2v2, so that just changes the entire dynamic a lot, so you just have to keep all those things in mind, and that can really change how you play. I mean, I've seen actual pros rank pretty low in Wingman just because it's an entirely different game, and if you're so used to playing in normal matchmaking, that alone can throw you off. It obviously is only a 2v2, which changes a lot of the dynamics of the gameplay around it, and also because it is only a 2v2, the maps are changed quite a bit. There's only one site open, so you have to kind of keep that in mind, and how the sightlines are to be played, how far or how close you should be playing them, all those kinds of things, which I'll go over in this video. Anyway though, without further ado, let's just jump into the video. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is which weapons you should buy, because you shouldn't usually just buy the same weapons you do in normal matchmaking. For example, in normal matchmaking, if you're used to it, if you have the money, you're supposed to go for usually full utility as in nades, full diffuse kit, well, you can't really get a half diffuse kit, so armor, helmet, and hopefully an op, an AK, or an M4. That totals out to, if you go with the op combo, which obviously is the most expensive one, 7,150. With a max money cap of 8,000, you're really coming close, so if you do lose that round, which you have a pretty high chance because you're buying an op, which I'll go into later, then you're gonna lose all of your money from just a single full buy, even when you had the maximum amount of money. Because of this, you have to play your economics game a little bit differently than you usually would. For one, if you have a primary weapon, you don't really have to rely on a secondary weapon like a pistol nearly as much, because there's only 2 people that you're going to be fighting. So unlike matchmaking where you can be fighting 3 people and you have to pull out your pistol, there's only 2, and for pretty much every single gun in this game that is a primary weapon, there's going to be enough bullets in the magazine to allow you to get those 2 kills. But a slightly more important reason why you should change up your economics in Wingman is because of how the maps are laid out. The AK and the M4, you know, 2 of the most popular and most versatile weapons, are very good and very popular in competitive matchmaking. The reason for this is that they work well in close range and at long range combat, so it's very useful for whatever situation you're in, but in Wingman that's a little bit different. If you didn't already know, the maps are closed off in a specific way so that only one bomb site is available and a lot of different pathways are cut off. Typically for whatever site they choose for Wingman for the players to play on, it's usually the one with the smallest sight lines. On top of that, maps made originally for Wingman like Rialto already have very small sightlines if you play it well, so you just have to kind of keep that kind of playstyle in mind. Now, what does this mean for your economy and your weapon choice? Well, you can choose weapons that are shorter range like SMGs way more often, because you're not going to get punished for not having a weapon that does well in long range encounters. These maps and the situations that they offer just aren't nearly as varied as normal maps, so therefore you won't have to switch from long range to short range, and therefore you can just choose a weapon like an MP9 or a UMP, because there's not going to be that many situations where you're going to have to fight at a long range. Now, obviously this statement doesn't hold 100% true in all situations. Like for example, if you're on CT on Cobble and you want to watch from Chicken Coop, it's probably best you have an M4 because it is a pretty long sightline for a Wingman map, but generally almost all of your encounters are going to be pretty short range, so having an SMG will not put you at a massive disadvantage as it usually does in a normal matchmaking game. So yeah, overall just keep in mind, if there's any mode to play with an SMG and actually do well with it, it's Wingman, because there's so many short sightlines, there's so many great places to hide, and there's only 2 enemies you have to take out, so running out of ammo will not be an issue. And really quick, before I leave the weapon choice segment of this video, I just want to say the op is rarely ever a good idea, especially if there are no long sightlines, as there usually aren't on Wingman maps, just because overall, the op is most effective when there's a lot of people coming out of a place that's very far away from you. For example, if you're at truck on cash watching A, and there's a lot of people rushing the site, then that is a great situation to be an op in, but obviously in Wingman there is less than half of the amount of players per team, and also the maps rarely have any long sightlines, so that just takes away a lot of the op's best strengths, which just makes it not as an ideal weapon to use as it usually is. And that's not to say that it is entirely useless in this mode. There are a few places where it can be pretty strong, but overall it just doesn't seem a very good use of nearly $5,000, especially when the max amount of money cap is only at 8,000, so you're pretty much going to lose all of your money if you do lose that round. Now that I finally finished ranting about how useless the op is after my teammate buys it every 3 rounds and then dies and asks for a drop, I can finally talk about grenades. Now, grenades are incredible utilities even in normal competitive matchmaking, so when you get to use it in Wingman where there's limited sightlines and limited places where they can come from, it can be even more powerful. For example, if you are a CT, you can usually count the amount of places where the enemy can come from on most maps to be 2 or 3 different places. You can smoke off one of the places, your teammate can smoke off another one of the places, or if they're not listening to you, you could just throw a fire there, and usually there's only one more place they can come from. Now this kind of situation isn't going to happen 100% of the time. Some maps have maybe 3 or 4, maybe on the more open maps like Rialto or Lake, but generally grenades are meant to be very useful area denial tools, and when there's less areas they can come from, it becomes even more powerful. For this reason alone, I highly recommend you buy a firebomb or a smoke or both if you have the money, just because of how small Wingman maps are, and because they're that small, if you take out just a single sightline, you're going to have a way bigger advantage than if you did it in a normal match, because there's way more sightlines than those to cover. But anyway, just kind of keep that in mind. The more sightlines that you cover, the bigger advantage you'll have, because they're going to be forced to go into more and more specific places that you'll know they're going to come from. So if they always seem to camp one area or just really good at holding a specific position, you can always just smoke them off, because the way Wingman maps are set up, they're way smaller and tend to have less sightlines, so just kind of keep that in mind when wondering which nade to pick up. And on top of that, while we are on the subject of utilities, just keep in mind that you don't really need to usually buy a defuse kit if you're on CT, because, you know, usually it's kind of more of a deathmatch, whichever team kills the other one first, more usually than a bomb plant, because bomb plants are pretty frequent in the normal competitive modes, but then it's only a 2v2, it's more of a deathmatchy kind of game than plant the bomb and try to run and protect it. Anyway though, the next thing you should do is analyze your teammate. Now it's never really a bad idea to analyze your teammates in a match, you know, you're just figuring out how good they are, where they should play, overall those kinds of things, but in Wingman there's only one other person on your team, and that guy is going to really have a big effect on if you guys win or lose the match. You can't really carry every single match that you play. So just try to figure out if he's better than you, if he's worse than you. Does he get more kills? Does he get less kills? Does it seem like he rushes more? Just kind of follow and understand what he's doing so you can have a better understanding of how to play along with him. It's always good to try to understand your teammates, but especially in competitive, it's a little bit of a mess trying to figure out what 4 other people are thinking. While in a Wingman, there's obviously only one, so try to figure out what he's thinking and how to play well with him. If he likes rushing, follow along with him. If he likes, you know, holding back, then watch the other sideline where you can get flanked from. Just try to play well with your teammate, because there's only one other person that's going to watch your back, and there's only one other person that can help you get the lead. Kind of try to figure out who is the leader of each match. For example, if my teammate is carrying and he has a lot of money and I just died, I won't really ask him for a buy, because I think he's going to do better with that money, because he's just playing really well right now. If I have good economy but he doesn't, but he's doing way better this match, then I'm probably going to drop him and focus on giving him the best items, because overall it is a team game, but more so it's about winning. So if he's doing way better, I'm going to focus on making sure he does well so we can both win the match. On the other hand though, if you have like 10 or more kills and your teammate is pushing maybe 2 kills or something and they're just doing way worse than you, maybe you don't have to drop them every single round when they keep dying, because overall, if you think about it, the economy is better used on yourself who's playing better, and it would kind of be wasted on them who's not really playing that well that day. In other words, or more so in simpler words, just kind of focus on making sure whoever's playing the best is really getting the items they deserve, because if you're not doing that well but you have a lot of money, it's probably a better idea to make sure they succeed so you both can win the match. Now the last thing I'm going to be talking about in this video is strats. Now strats are kind of complex, they're very different in, you know, higher levels of matchmaking versus pro scenes, just a bunch of different things, but in Wingman it's way different because there's way less rounds, and therefore way less rounds where you have to effectively trick your enemy. For example, on CT there's a bunch of different places where you can hide that you can get the jump on them, but usually in, you know, competitive matchmaking there's only a few places where people actually sit, and the reason for that is that there are 15 rounds that you're usually going to have to play on a specific side, so you can't just try to change up every single time. You're going to probably have to go with the one that's most effective, that's tried and proven to be a very good place to sit for whatever angle you're on, for whatever situation. The thing about Wingman is it's all about tricking your enemy and getting surprises. You don't have to be in the most opportune spot, you don't have to be in the best place, you can surprise them, because there's only 9 rounds which you have to win, and that's pretty much only, you know, 4 on each side, and there are surely 4 different places where you can hide for CT, for example, or 4 different strategies you can run with on terrorist. They may seem very stupid, and oftentimes very stupid things work in Wingman, but that's because you only have to trick them a few times before you get the edge. The reason these kinds of stupid strats never really work out in matchmaking or in high-level pro games is because, for example, pro matches usually play at least 30 rounds and there's overtime and they can play just a bunch more, so you usually don't have that many opportunities to get a surprise in and actually work. Dumb strats just aren't as effective in normal competitive matchmaking because there's so many more rounds that you have to do it over and over again, so they're obviously going to learn and they're not going to fall for it anymore. On Wingman, there's only a couple rounds where you have to fool them, so you can do that and then get away with it, unlike normal matches which tend to be at least 3 times as long, and, you know, stupid strats aren't going to last you that many rounds. On top of that, obviously only playing against 2 different players, it's easy to pull a stupid strat on only 2 different people because there's less chance that they're going to like turn around, or they're maybe going to check a specific area. All those kinds of things are less likely when they only have a few people watching out. So strats you usually think would never work in competitive matchmaking can be actually pretty useful in Wingman. So just try out, do stupid things because they're not going to expect it, and you only have to surprise them a few times before you get the win. But anyway though, that's how you get better at Wingman in CSGO. There's a bunch of different strats and weapons and all these things you have to keep in mind that are very, very different from normal competitive matchmaking. So just kind of understand what you're playing. You're not just playing a, a 5v5 with a few less players. It does feel entirely different, especially with how the maps are set up. So just kind of keep all those things in mind, and have fun, and subscribe, and a like, and leave a comment, and yeah. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. Hope to see you guys in my next video. Peace.